So basically, as a leader, I set the parameters of this is what I expect. This is also what you're going to get from me. Whatever you need to be successful, that's what I'm here for.
Okay, welcome to another exciting edition of the Journey to Freedom podcast. And I am Dr. Beyond, your host today. And as I get excited every time I get to do one of these, and I was literally just, I was just sitting down and I was thinking about the podcast, and I was thinking about what can I do to enhance it? What can I do to make it better? What can I do to get more subscribers and more listeners? Because that's what we all want, right? We all want the whole world to listen to our podcast. And then I was just thinking about how blessed I have been to be able to do this podcast, because last year in 2024, I went to a meeting. It was about a year and a half ago. I went to this meeting. It was called the Trusted Edge podcast, and it was, or not podcast, it was just Trusted Edge seminar. And a guy named David Horsanger he was in Minneapolis. I don't go to Minneapolis too often, but I was in Minneapolis, and a friend had taken me there, and there was this group of about 500 folks there that were learning about leadership and how to interact with trust and how important trust is. And we got to start with trust. And I used to call myself a person who said, well, people would say, well, I need to see somebody who looks like me in order to know that I can do the thing, or at least similar, right? And I said, well, I don't need that. It doesn't matter what I do. I'm going to be successful at it. I don't need to see people who look like me. But every time I go to a room like this, right, I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4. If you look at me, so I'm just fooling myself thinking I don't care. Well, I go to this seminar, and there's 400 people. There's only about 30 people of color in the room, and I'm trying to ask myself why. And I'm thinking about the different rooms I've been in, and why are we? Because we have trouble. We have issues with trust as a culture. We have issues with trusting ourselves. We have trust, for men. We have trust, issues with our women. We have trust issues with our own community, and then the white community as well, and other races of community. We just don't trust. And I don't know if it's because we haven't taught to trust. It's because we've been burned, a few times in our lives when we tried to trust. And so I said, how can I come back? And so I started Journey to Freedom as a coaching program to say, how do we get into this trust? How do we get into this thing? And I said, well, in year one, I don't know what other men think. I don't know how they interact. And so let me interview and start finding out. And so I said, I'm going to interview 100 Black men in 2024. And then I started doing it and go, that's a lot. How am I going to get to 100 Black men? And how am I going to find all these men? Because I want them to be successful. I want them to be pillars in the community. And when I started thinking of what does the success mean? And trying to define success, right? Because success isn't the amount of money you have. It's not your ability to communicate. It's not your, it's a lot of what you do in the community. And do you go back and do people respect you? And, would somebody say, I want to talk to Daryl Williams, go talk to him because he's got answers. To me, that's successful. That's the person you want to go. If they say, no matter what, don't go talk to Daryl because he's not going to tell you anything. Now, then you're not in that success group. But what I found out is, as I did one person or two people, and I got some famous people in there, some non-famous people, there have been some, I guess, themes. One of the themes is the one I said, trying to see people who look like us in a role that we could do. Another thing has been fatherhood and what it means to be a dad and being excited about being a dad. But I would say more than anything, it's our ability to live in purpose and serve others. And when you're willing to serve others, success just kind of goes hand in hand. And so I ended up doing 105 last year. I've done almost 40 this year. I don't want to stop because I get to grow. I get to learn. I get to go. Well, like last couple of weeks ago, I interviewed a gentleman from Chicago who was in prison for 19 years as a result. But here's what's the kicker is he was in jail the day that the crime was committed that put him in prison for 19 years. And it took them 19 years to let this man out of jail.
Mm.
I mean, and you just go, oh my, but to see his heart, I mean, he's been out of jail for 11 years now, and he's one of the most thankful people, and gratitude, and
Wow.
not mad, and forgiving. And I'm like, you put me in jail for 1 year, I won't be mad. Forget 20 years. How do you do it? But I learned and I grew, and and so all of these interviews are so fun to do. Today, we have Daryl Williams on, and just before the show, we were just kind of talking about being excited in life, and sometimes we do things and we do it well, but it doesn't mean it doesn't stop being challenging. It doesn't mean that we get to our, I've been doing this for 15 years, and so I just show up and I'm on autopilot. Because if you do stuff that makes you successful, you get in positions where there's a reason why you're successful. People are asking you questions, and people are putting you in positions that they want answers. And Daryl's that guy. But we're going to start out, before we chop it up with all those cool things, we're just going to talk about his story and where he came from. Because, another thing I found is in all these stories, I'll ask somebody to tell me who are you? And they'll just give me their bio. And they tell me everything about what they do. But when they tell you their story, then you know them a little bit better, because it's not, well, I went to Harvard, and when I went to Harvard, I'll change my voice like people who talk from Harvard.
Right.
What's I don't know. But you just go, no, wait a minute. Where did you come from? Well, I came from X and X and X. And then how did you progress through that? I think that's what people love to hear more than anything. And so here we go. We got Daryl. I used up a little bit of time of his time, but we're going to find out who he is, and then we're going to have some fun and chop it up. So Daryl, please share with us your story in the best way that you can tell it.
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me, Dr. B. Appreciate being on here today. My story, basically, I just started from high school. Grew up in Compton, California.
Okay.
So those that saw the movie Boys in the Hood, that was the era that I actually grew up in.
Okay.
And my brothers and sister grew up during the era straight out of Compton.
Mm.
So growing up there, just wanted to figure out, what's my purpose in life? What else is out here? It's got to be more than helicopters flying over your house every night. And for me, that journey began with the military. I ended up meeting a recruiter my junior year, and had no intention on joining the military. And the guy came to me, was asking, what they normally do, what's your plans? And I think I made up something, Dr. B, like, I'm going to go to University of Arkansas and study business. And just seemed like this guy just opened up a book and said, this is how much it costs to go to University of Arkansas. And then the family I grew up in, it was four of us in a small apartment. And matter of fact, I knew it never should have been an apartment because it was too small. Because when I went back to go visit after during the military, they tore it down. So I knew it was that small. Yeah, it was real small, just a little something somebody sold just to get people in there. But once that guy opened up the book and showed me like this how much it costs to go to college, I was like, okay, my grades are nice, but money is not even an option. We don't have it like that. And I just started getting real serious. Like, okay, tell me about this military thing. And the more he talked about it, I was like, you know what? That might be my way out. So for me, I ended up joining the military. The job specialty, people would call it today, is human resources professional. And once I did that, it's interesting because all of my brothers and sisters followed suit because I was the oldest. So they all joined the military as well, which lets me know that, people are watching you, whether you think they are or not. Then I joined the military, went to Germany, my first assignment. Just wanted to get as far away from the United States as possible, just to see something different.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, went to Germany. And then the military, Dr. B, they have different ways that they kind of see what type of stud you are, or however you want to call it, superstar. And one of the things is if you're good in physical fitness, right, they kind of like that. And then also if you have a lot of military knowledge, right, Those two things can kind of move you ahead of the line. Besides, being a great soldier and all that. So I used to go to these competition boards because somebody said that's a way to get promoted. And I went to every board that I could. And I went all the way to Soldier of the Year for my region. I didn't win, but I told people I still had a great time. Some senior leaders saw me. I had an assignment to go to Fort Hood, Texas, out to Germany. And one of those senior leaders said, basically, I see something in you. I'm changing your orders. You're not going to Fort Hood, Texas. You're going to the Pentagon.
Ooh.
And I'm like, why am I going to the Pentagon? Nope, the soldiers don't go to places like that. But I didn't know Dr. B. He was preparing me for a purpose that I didn't know about.
Mhm.
And basically, what he told me was it takes special people to go to what they call special assignments. And I think there's something in you that can allow you to thrive there.
Mhm.
And went to the Pentagon. It was nice, it was different, but it just wasn't what I was used to. Right, I was used to the marching and all that type of stuff, and to be in a place where it was self motivating, and you didn't have to show up in formations. It was just new to me, and I was just too inexperienced to realize how good I had it. So I spent a lot of time just trying to get out of there and go to a regular unit.
Mhm.
And eventually I saw an ad for the White House Communications Agency. And a friend of mine, we're scheming, and then that's really what we're doing. We were scheming, Dr. B. It was like, if we go to this interview Friday morning, finish by 10, we can be off for the rest of the day. Had no intentions on joining, didn't even know what they did.
Mhm.
And a couple of months later, I get a note saying, congratulations, you've been accepted to the White House Communications Agency. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this? What do they do?
White House. Oh my gosh.
Yep. So come to find out, when you see the president traveling, right? There's different groups that support him. There's the Secret Service, which everybody's familiar with. There's White House staff, and then there's the White House Military Office, and we fall underneath that group, which is the White House Communications Agency, which basically any piece of equipment that the administration touches comes from basically our organization. We make sure that they can talk secure any place, at any time, anywhere. And once you get there, they take your normal job that you have in the military, but then they also give you auxiliary jobs. So since I
Mhm.
was a non-communications IT person, they took my HR background and said, well, we're going to make you kind of like a logistics coordinator. You're going to coordinate trips, be in charge of the teams logistically. You still had an officer or communication officer that was over the teams, but I was kind of like that right hand person. So just being able to travel all over the world. At that time, I got there with Bush Senior was in office.
Okay.
Then it changed over to Clinton, and I just traveled all over, just supporting the teams that supported the office of the president. Just an amazing opportunity, a place I was able to travel all over the world. Did that for about 6 years. Then I left, went to Korea for about a year. 501st in my brigade, just military intelligence unit.
Mhm.
Did that for a year. Then they brought me back to the White House because of my clearance. And then at that time, I was traveling on a different roster supporting the vice president. So now I'm actually in charge of the smaller teams. So at that time, Vice President Gore was in office. And then when he left, Vice President Cheney came in, and I supported Cheney till about 2004, when I ended up retiring out of the military. And just got a job at the contractor for about 5 years, teaching leadership and things of that nature. And then started my business, which was Alliance Seminars Coaching, which basically just my way of paying it forward because of all the different things that I experienced. It was like I cannot share what I learned and help other people based on my experiences. So that's kind of my story.
No, I love it, and there's so many questions that I have because most people never even understand your life or what you could have been able to do. Like the box was, I think of a kid in Compton in the '80s and early '90s, whatever, going like not even know the White House is just a picture on in a book that because you're on the other side of the United States, you're not even on the East Coast where you visit DC. Maybe if you had family or once or twice, but no, you hardly get to the beach, right? Because you live by the beach in the West Coast, right? And then you're thinking the White House, that's the president. That's like the person who runs our country. And what makes me go to is our identity, right? And the identity that we hold for ourselves and how that is shaped and how that is formed. Because your identity, if we're able to become a person that we need to be in order to do the thing, there's got to be a transformation. And I think some people, especially nowadays, want that transformation to happen like that. But there's no way you're a kid in Compton that gets to go to the White House without going through some identity shifts in who you are. So maybe you can kind of share what that was like, and what you learned and who the people were, the things that happened that allowed you to become that man that you are today and to be able to be trusted, you know, with the highest clearance available, to be able to work in a White House.
Well, one of the things I definitely learned, probably that prepared me before I even got there, was just being in Germany. And like you said, growing up in Compton, like I knew what was around me. I knew I had to keep my head on a swivel. I knew I had limited choices as far as you're going to draw on a game, you're going to sell drugs, or you're going to be in sports or whatever. And I was like, I'm somewhere in the middle of all of that. So just being able to, when I went to Germany, to see these men that were leaders, that's what really just piqued my interest. Like, what is a leader? Why are these guys have so much rank on their shoulder? Why are their boots so shiny and their uniforms look like you can cut your finger on it? Like, I want to do that. What does it take to get that? So I think for me, the transformation started. I had to see something that was out there that I didn't know existed, and that was leadership. And for me, I've always been fascinated with that topic because I find that that topic can lead you to a lot of different things, particularly the five pillars that you talk about. So then, by the time I got to the White House, once I got past the shock and awe, I immediately started thinking about, okay, how do I survive here? How do I make it? How do I excel? Because maybe they might find out, oh, this was a mistake. Send this guy back to the regular army. Because how does somebody from Compton get to, basically from the hood to the house? Like that just doesn't happen, right? So I immediately surrounded myself with people, and I was like, hey man, what does it take to be the best here? Not just to be here, but to be the best.
Mm-hmm.
And as I traveled, I saw different people, some that looked like me, some that didn't look like me, but they were really good at what they did. And I made it a point, Dr. B, to pick all those individuals' brains, right? Guys, young ladies, like, why are you so good at what you do? Why is it that when they say your name going on a trip, people get excited? So I was doing kind of like my own internal research of
Mm-hmm.
what is it that made these people tick? What made them be the best? Because only the top 1% of the servers even get to serve for the White House Communications Agency. So even within that 1%, there's still a pedestal there of now who's the best radio lead, who's the best operations NCO, who's the best audiovisual lead. Like I wanted to be the best. And I think what helped me was being able to talk to those people, take honest feedback, honest criticism to say, hey, if you want to be the best, this is what it's going to take. And I just took on that challenge. I loved it. And like you said, when we were talking before the show, you end up becoming one of those go to people.
Mm-hmm.
And people always ask you, well, when did you know you were a leader? I was like, for me, I think it came when other people were asking me different questions about how to help them in different things, or, how did I get promoted, or what would I recommend? And they could have went to a lot of other people. But when they start coming to you, that kind of lets you know that there's something inside of you that people see.
Was there something that, and I'm thinking through your childhood and stuff that um, made you decide I want to be the best? 'Cause when I think about my childhood and think about, I didn't have the best grades. In fact, I was a special ed student that, I could care less about grades. And then I got to be able to be an athlete and start competing, and I wanted to be the best there. But then just, what makes us that switch that turns on that says, you know what, mediocrity isn't going to be my life. Can you pinpoint that to anywhere, or just God just gave that to you? What? Yeah. What did you see or hear that said I can't continue to do this of below the rim? I think about playing above the rim. They talk about good, right? So, what made you start wanting to play above the rim?
I think for me, like I said, it was first that visual when I got to Germany to see all
Mm-hmm.
these sharp
Mm-hmm.
leaders, and it's like no matter where they were, you see the shiny boots, you see the nice uniform, and you're like, I want that. Like, how do I grow to do that? And then when I got to the White House Communications Agency, it was like, okay, now everybody's good, right? It's like everybody's an all-star, right? So now how do you become the star of stars? And I think for me, that was the challenge. It was like all these people that are showing me how to do it. It was almost like a Kobe Bryant mentality. It's like, yeah, I respect you, but I'm going to carve out my own path. And I think that was it for me. And then the other part too, in the back of my mind was, okay, you're out of Compton. Eventually, you're going to meet people flying on Air Force Two and out there in different places. And everybody, oh, so where you from? Where'd you grow up? And just when I would tell people I was from Compton, because I didn't say LA, I was like, I'm from Compton.
So you did, yeah.
Almost everybody said, how did you get out of there? Like that was the common question from a lot of people. How did you get out of there? So after a while, I was like, what do you mean? How did I get out of there? I was like, I mean, everybody has a hood. Everybody has places that's not as glamorous. I said, but still, life is life. So I think the more I heard that question, the more I wanted to show people this is how. All right. And I would tell them I'm just fortunate that I had opportunity that other people did not have. Because I tell people all the time, I used to go to class with some game bangers. They were smarter than me. And the few times they would come to class, and I forget this one guy, man, he was so sharp, Dr. B. He only come to class every now and then. And we're in like, I don't know if it was the geometry class or something. He show up, sit in the back, and I'm like trying to figure out this formula. It's on the board.
Yeah.
I'm halfway through the formula, Dr. B, and he's like, oh, X equals 4. I'm like, wait, how'd you get that? And he told me how it was, and I'm finished up my formula. I'm like, dude, like, that's it. Like, man, you should come here like every day and make the teacher look bad and make us look bad. But he was like, nah, that's not my thing, right? That's for people like you. I know what I want to do, and this ain't it. So part of me also was I want to be good to represent those individuals that didn't have the opportunity that I had.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a lot on my shoulders. Maybe I put it there, it wasn't there, but it was just, I want to represent my city, I want to represent my family, right? Competitive juices, like you said, start meeting people that were just as good as me. Okay, now how do I get better than that person? So I think it was a lot of things that allowed me to kind of go through that transformation.
Well, and I love how you took, them asking the question, because somehow your identity, you weren't going to let your identity be tied to what people think the city you grew up in was like. Because they don't know, they haven't been there, right? Hollywood, because it's in Burbank. I went to school at Azusa Pacific University, so I moved from Denver to California, and I stayed there for 25 years. And so I was a track coach, and I spent a lot of time back and forth in the Compton. But I know what the portrayal of the media is of Compton. I know some really incredible people that are from Compton, right? That just happen to live in the city, that turned into this belief that, well, you must be super special because if you aren't still in Compton, as if everybody who ever lived there is still there, and still, and you look at that and go, well, wait a minute, no. I had some great people that are around me. I had a community
Mm,
of people, whether I lived in a small place or a big space. I had a community of people. Not all of it was good, not all of it was bad, but I chose to make sure that I'm going to represent my community, and I'm going to do the best that I possibly can, because you've already decided who I was based on where I grew up. And
true.
there's so many, what do you call it, the jungle or Capri Green, or all you think about
Yep.
all the different, low income neighborhoods that are in the United States.
Right.
And you almost, you know, I guess identify people based on, well, either you were an outlier or you were, but no, you just said, I'm going to be the best. I want to kind of shift over to trust,
Mm-hmm.
because, as I was telling you before the show, this thing called trust is such a big deal. And we got to
Mm-hmm.
start with trust, lead with trust, and you're a leader. And so trusting people has to be something that you navigate. And for what's kind of cool for me in your story is people trusted you because of why? Because you don't get to work in the White House and they don't trust you. They don't trust your integrity. They don't trust your character. They don't trust that you're going to walk out of there without taking a statue with you, whatever it is that you're going to do while you're there. Based on, hey, he's from Compton, we better, So how do you just trust in your own belief and trust people before you know them, and then you give them the benefit of the doubt? And then I guess the other side of this that I don't usually get to ask my guest is, what did you do to get people to trust you?
So this is the big piece about leadership that I love.
Okay.
Every leader that I've met in the military and outside the military, they have a lot of different characteristics, right, that make up a leader, and everybody can come up with their own. But trust is obviously one of those things. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, when people ask me like, "How do you get people to trust you?" and to me, it was simple. You look out for them. It's no magic formula. It's no, so many years. It's like from day one, every trip that I went on, we had a different team. So I had to almost like reintroduce myself every time I did a trip. Said, hey, this is who I am. This is where I'm from. This is what we're going to do to be successful before the vice president arrives, right? We're going to do this. We're going to work as a team, right? We're going to help each other, right? I'm not too big and too important to lift the box, so I expect everybody else to lift the box, right? If my job is finished, I'm going to go check on somebody else, right? So basically, as a leader, I set the parameters of this is what I expect, but this is also what you're going to get from me. And then the biggest thing I would tell them is, whatever you need to be successful, that's what I'm here for. Like I already have the rank, I already have the role, so that's not going to change. My job in this role is how do I get the best out of Dr. B on this particular mission, on this particular trip? And if Dr. B has a smaller team, how do I help Dr. B lead his team? And when I did that, it automatically, one, the trust was there because they saw my actions matched, right? What I said. The second thing I used to do, Dr. B, was when people would make mistakes on the road, it wasn't that many, but stuff that they did make,
Mm-hmm.
and whether the military aid or the people back in DC was like, man, what happened on that trip? Like, it was me. Like, I took the hit for when things didn't go right. But when things went well, it's like, man, I heard that trip was hard and man, you pulled out some miracles. I said, it wasn't me. It was actually Dr. B. I would give the team the credit when they did well, but I took the credit when it wasn't well. And then team members would come up to me and say, hey, why didn't you dime me out? Why you didn't tell them the truth? I was like, because I don't want people to label you just because you had one bad incident, one bad trip. That's not who you are, right? I know that inside of you, you had a mistake. You're going to grow from it. You're going to learn from it, right? I said, but sometimes in life, people don't give you that second chance. And I didn't want you to have to be that person to be in a situation where I made one mistake and everybody says, oh, watch out for Dr. B on this trip because that guy forgot to do this or that guy had this reputation. And I would always do that. So the more I did that, just like you said, the more my name got out there that people are like, hey, I want to travel with that guy because he looks out for people.
And what you're saying just means if people can just, and I hope you guys go back and you watch and listen to some of this if you're really trying to understand what it means to be a leader, right? Because leaders have to serve. And and sometimes you think, well, I got to be like Mother Teresa, or I got to serve, and I got to be this big, organization, or these. I got to serve millions of people or hundreds of people. If you can just serve one person at a time, and they're sometimes not when they're doing their best, but you're willing to say, I'm going. My job is every day that I'm going to get up, I'm going to figure out a way to serve you. That begins to stack. and it begins to stack. And then people trust you, and then they give you more responsibility. And you keep doing that, you develop what they call a reputation for not just it almost, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or not, it doesn't really mean the skill set you have. It's your ability to communicate with people and get stuff done. You know, obviously you have to have some skills that to be doing what you're doing. But in the long run, people don't care. I mean, we hear this all the time. Care how much you know they until they know how much you care. Then you get the responsibilities. Then you get to move up, and if we could do that, right? I believe if everybody got up and said that every morning, you know, who can I serve today, and find a way to do that. Most of the issues in our world are dead, like flat out, complete, done, without saying what are you going to do for me today. And I just love the fact that you've kind of figured that out in relationships. And so it's some of that just the way that you listen or the way that you just care about the person. I mean, and most of your career, I guess, you know, when I think, not most of it, but part of your career was like mine, where we didn't have these devices in our face all the time. And not like literally conversations where you're trying to have, you go to restaurants, you go to places, and two people are across from each other, and they're both doing this as if the outside world is more important. How did you bring people in to believe that so they felt like they were the most important? Because I feel like that's what you do. The most important person during that time, right?
I did, and I have to give all the credit to my favorite mentor. I've had many over the years. I still have them now, even though they tell me don't call them mentor, call them colleagues. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but you don't understand. I always have a place for you as a higher esteem, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this one guy, Dr. B, his name was Steve Smith,
Okay.
and man, this guy, talking about the ultimate mentor, that story about making a mistake and
Mm-hmm.
somebody taking up, like he's the first one that did that for me. I got lost one time. This is before GPS and all that. You
Mm-hmm.
had to find your own way from the airport to the hotel and get ready for the motorcade setup. And I got lost, man. And I was like, man, do I tell this guy I'm lost or do I try to fake it and try to figure it out? And I just told him, like, hey, sir, I'm so sorry. I ran this route 5 times yesterday and I'm lost. And he was like, don't worry about it. He said, pull over. We pulled over. He went to somebody right there and was like, hey, how do we get to the back of the Miami airport? And he gets back in the car and he goes, the guy gave me the directions. Just go ahead and go this way. We're going to go a different way. And then Dr. B, he proceeds to go, so tell me a little bit more about you. I'm freaking out, Dr. B, like, dude,
Yeah.
we're late. The motorcade's going to be setting up. They're going to be looking for our car. And he's just basically showed me who you are right now
Mm-hmm.
is more important than us getting to this motorcade. He was like, we're going to get to the motorcade. I just need to know who, more about who you
Yeah.
are and all that. And man, to this day, like this is like 2025. That happened back in 1991.
Whew, you still remember it.
But
Oh
I
my
still
gosh.
remember like it was yesterday. And
Yeah.
I asked him at the end of the day, I mean, at the end of the trip, like, sir, why didn't you tell the people? Because the people were asking, like, well, why'd you guys so late? What happened? And he was like, you know, partly the truth. We got lost and he got us there. That was his answer. And I'm like, sir, why didn't you tell the truth? And he told me the same thing I just told you. And his warning to me was, now you do that for somebody else. So when he gave me that instruction, I'm like, man, this is like my number one mentor. Like every time I'm around this dude, he's special. He make me feel special. But then Dr. B, I got the harsh reality, like, man, he makes everybody feel like that. It's like everybody's like, oh yeah, Mr. Smith is my guy. Like, no, he's my guy. But then I realized the specialness of what he did.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes back to what you said. Every time he spoke to you, he made you feel like you were the guy. You can do anything, whatever challenge you had. You have to go through this challenge because it's about to take you to this next level. And I was like, I'm going to do that. When he's not around, he's not in the room. I want to be that guy that they go, man, Mr. Smith's not here. I got a question. Oh, D, come here for a second. And I just wanted to be that. And it was so cool because I got to a point where he retired and left the agency, and then I came back. But I was like, one of, not the, but I was one of the Mr. Smiths in my agency. And I would tell people, there's a guy that was my mentor, and I'm just trying to do what he would have done in today's time. And it was so cool. And I had breakfast with him last month because he still comes out to DC because he's actually in Colorado, actually.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yep, and he
I'll
comes
go
to
look
DC
for Mr.
for
Stand
business.
Up.
I'm telling you, he's a cool dude, man. And we were talking, and here's how cool he is, Dr. B. I'm like, hey, so now, sir, just so I was like the Mr. Smith of my generation, right? Letting him know, and I'm thanking him, right, for showing me that path. That he's like, no, no, no. He's like, don't say it like that. He's like, you were the leader for your generation. He's like, there's only one Mr. Smith. That was me. He said, you did things in your own way. You did things that I probably couldn't have done, but you were still resourceful and you were there for the people. So being around people like that, that's what makes me like want to be that trustworthy. Because now I learned that it wasn't about helping people as much as that was one phase of your leadership life. The second phase is you got to create new leaders.
Duplication, right? It isn't
Absolutely.
you just being there if you don't have a heart for bringing up who's next.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, you have, it's like, so it can't die with the person. And the greatest leaders are evidenced by how many leaders came from what they did.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. Let's talk about the Mr. Williams 3 to 4 steps to developing leaders. What are some of these things that you would say? These, if you want to develop leaders, these are 3 or 4 things that you must do in order to do that.
So one thing about the military, they always change up the leadership definition over the years. So
Mhm.
the one they had back in my day, I use that because they don't use it anymore, so I can claim it as my own now.
There you
Uh,
go.
but the people that know during that time that served, they know what I'm talking about, and
Mhm.
they have this acronym of leadership, right? DRSHI and the P, right, for leadership. And I tell anybody, if you want to be a leader, definitely have these things, and that's loyalty, discipline, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. To me, if you have all those things, there's no way you cannot be an effective leader.
And you have to develop each of those, right? I mean, it's not like you
Absolutely.
just were born with them. And that's what people think. Well, I was a natural born leader. I think just about everything that you do, you learn. Because when I was born, I didn't know nothing. I didn't know what a hand was. But but those are skills that I guess if you see them modeled, is a big thing. If you can be fortunate enough to be in places where you get to see some of those models. I mean, I don't honor is something that when you say that, you almost have to see that model. You almost have to see what that looks like because you don't just understand it. That's like an emotion or a feeling. It's not it's just a word you can define. It's you see somebody in a situation and you see how they respond to it. And you go, I want to be like that, right?
Exactly. And I think it's funny because some people do say, we just get into the argument, are leaders born or are they made? And I always tell people that it's both, right?
Yeah.
Because if you look back when you were younger, and I know people that might be listening to this might not understand about what a playground is and things of that nature, but back on the playground, you always saw that one kid, I don't care if it was kindergarten or first grade, right? Like everybody followed Dr. B when he was like in kindergarten. Well, why? Why were the kids enamored with Dr. B? Because Dr. B, instead of coming down the slide, will say, hey, guess what? I'm going to jump off the top of the slide. No way, no way. You're going to get killed. It's like, watch me. And you take that one young kid, male or female, and the first time they jump off the slide, immediately they're a leader
Yep.
because they have done something that nobody else would do, right? Or if they were in the swing and instead of just doing the regular swing, they would go to the highest point and say, watch me jump off the swing at the highest point. So what did that have to do with leadership? Basically, that individual at that young age showed people that you have to be brave, right? You have to trust in yourself, right? And it's okay to make a mistake. So if they jumped off the slide and they fail and hurt themselves, right? Nobody says, "Oh, that was dumb. That was dumb." They go, "Wow, not only did he jump off the slide, he was bleeding." Right? I mean, it's just it adds to the playground legend of that person being a leader. So that's what people say. Well, I was born with it. Yes, you had some leadership traits when you were young because you were brave, you were bold, you were, different. I said, but everything else you definitely had to learn and have developed.
You think about associations and the people that you hang around with. And you hear now that the big thing now is, well, if you are the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. That's the big thing that we talk about, in this day and age. But we all have our group of friends. We all have our group of associations. How did you protect yourself, or maybe you don't even know, it just happened naturally, to make sure you were around people that could help move you forward instead of people? Because I'm sure there's people that you can go back to that grew up in the same neighborhood you are, and somehow your associations put you in the White House, and their associations put them somewhere less desirable. I guess I'll just say it that
No,
way.
it's the truth. No, it's the truth. And for me, I always tell people, I have, different sets of friends, right? I have some friends that are more professional, right? These are the people that are either gone to where I want to go or done those type of thing. And then there's friends that still like, they're my homeboys, like back in the hood. Like when I used to do trips to LA, like I'd go through the neighborhood. Like I have to call them, say, hey man, you guys gonna see this rental car, it's gonna be blue. Right, that's going to be me coming through because they see a car that they don't recognize, they automatically start,
Mm-hmm.
you know, grabbing weapons and trying to defend what's happening, right? But I think for me, I knew the balance. Like even when I was in Compton, man, like I used to tell people, like I was friends with the smart kids, I was friends with the gangsters, I was friends with the sports guys, right? Like I just knew like how to maneuver through all those different types of groups, and I kept that when I joined the military. So I knew that these are the officers that I hung out with. These are the enlisted people, right? These are the people that are hard charging and they're always searching for that next rank. And then these are the people it's like, man, I'm just glad that I'm in the military and I got three squares and I can send money back to my family. Like I'm not trying to get promoted. I'm good right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I love just being around all those type of people and not trying to change anybody, but just accept who they are and what they bring to my life, right? So, like I said, when I would go back to the hood on different trips, like the guys would always tell me, like, "Hey, man, we appreciate you coming to visit us because we know you don't have to. We know you can't stay long, right? We know that the stuff that we do, you can't be around, but the fact that you still would come and just check up on us, like that's cool. We appreciate that." So I think that was for me was one, I had to make sure I surrounded myself with people that were going to help me, but also I had to be around people that I could help.
What I think of, one of the things that delineates or separates leadership for me as I'm getting older and I'm finding is leaders talk about where they're going, and non-leaders talk about where we've been. And I keep going to these rooms where, because I have friends, right, that I grew up with, ones I went to college with, but so many of them want to continue to talk about the way it was and how it was and what we did. And that's great. The first time we have a conversation, I love to reminisce. But then every time I see them, they're talking about how it was. And great leaders always talk about where we're going. What are some of the things, even today, because you've had your military career, now you're doing beyond military career, how are you continuing with leadership, talking about the future and not living in the past?
So for me, one of the things that I try to do, especially as a coach,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still in the constant mode, leadership mode of, okay, how do I help you get to where you want to go?
Okay.
So a lot of times when I have conversation with people, and like you said before the show, you start hearing themes, you start seeing patterns, right? So then when I come into a circle with, um, say, high school kids, like there's a high school close to my where I stay where they do mock interview day. All the juniors go through the library or the media
Yeah.
center, whatever they call it, and you help them practice doing an interview for a job. So when they say, right, because I always ask them, what are you good at, right, and what do you think you want to do when you get older? And they go, well, I think I want to be an engineer. I'm like, perfect. Let's make this interview seem like you're doing an internship as a young engineer. And I just started asking them questions like, hey, so what do you do now that's not can, but it's going to make you a great engineer? What class are you taking now that when you look back from your engineer career and go like, man, I'm so glad I took that class. So what I do, Dr. B, is I put that vision in them because you brought up a great point. Sometimes people don't see the vision
Hmm.
because they don't know that they could be a part of that. So like even when I used to go back to the neighborhood and guys like, yeah, man, one day I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. I'm like, okay, I get that. I said, but what are you doing now, man? That even tomorrow you can have three more customers instead of one.
Yeah.
And they'll go, well, I guess I probably could go outside of Gardena and I probably could, sell my stuff at a different swap meet. So basically just asking them open-ended questions so that they can see like, hey man, there's a whole nother piece over there that you can conquer while still being fresh on this side of town.
Yes, that's so good to be able to because people can't see what they don't know, and somebody has to be the artist that paints that picture for them of what's possible. And a sign of a really good leader. So glad we get to talk about leadership. Kind of pivoting a little bit.
Hmm.
How has faith played a part in your journey, or has it?
So faith for me has been a huge part because that's one of the things that even got me through Compton. Like my mom prayed for me so much. Uh, like I didn't even know she was praying for me, right? I just
Yeah,
knew that, go to a house party and you come back and be like, a bullet could have easily hit me at that party versus somebody else, or even at the school. And then I remember, man, like I'd be so mad. It was some parties I wanted to go to, and my mom would be like, I got a bad feeling. You can't go. And I would be so upset, Doctor B, like, man, everybody's going to be at this party. This is like the party of the year. And then I get back to my boys after, we're like, hey, what happened? How's the party? Oh, man, you lucky you didn't go, man. They ended up shooting it
gosh.
up. And
Yeah.
we didn't even get a chance to have any fun. So I had to go back to my mom, like, hey, thanks for not letting me go to that one because, I heard that it wasn't the best. And but she would say, okay, but this next one you can go to. And she just had this feeling about her that I didn't know, man, at that time, right? So I took that faith with me when I went to the army. It was like, yeah, believe in yourself, believe in, your training and the people, like you're talking about having that trust. And she was like, but don't forget where you came from, right?
Mhm.
Like, you know, God has a purpose for you. And I used to hear that a lot, in church. Like God has a purpose for you, and only you'll know what that is. Um, but don't worry about getting to whatever that purpose is, right? But just enjoy the journey along that. I guess you hear that a long time ago,
Yeah.
and so it was so funny when I found myself as a leader. I ran across some leaders that were like, you go in their office and they had a Bible, right?
Hmm.
Which nothing wrong with that. That's just who they were. But then I would go into some other leaders' office and they didn't have a Bible, but I knew they were people of faith. So I would ask them,
Hmm.
the one that with the Bible, like, hey, why do you keep your Bible out in the office like that? And they were saying that's part of my identity. I want people to know that, when you come talk to me, this is the preface I'm going to come from. And then I asked the people, the leaders that didn't have the Bible, I was like, hey, how come you don't have the Bible out? And their answer, Dr. B, was, I don't want to miss out on the opportunity to help somebody. And I don't want them to walk in my office and they automatically see the Bible and have a preconceived notion that, oh, Dr. B is going to try to change me or he's going to try to, make me feel this way or that way. And I weighed both of them. Both answers were correct. But to me, it was which one is going to be more effective.
Yeah.
So I chose the one where my Bible's in my drawer. I don't have it out,
Hmm.
right? Um, because I never wanted to miss an opportunity. Somebody said, "Oh, I was going to talk to you, but never mind. I'll I'll wait for Dr. B, talk to him next week. And I found that to me it was more effective because later on people would find out that I was a person of faith, and then they would come back and because they go talk to, man, I went to go talk to him, man, he was really good, he gave me some great advice, and then they would say something like, oh, he's a associate pastor, right? No, we didn't even talk about that. We were talking about the Raiders and all that stuff.
Oh
And
my
then they would
God.
come back later and they'll say, man, why didn't you tell me you were like, a dude of faith? Man, I wouldn't have been cursing and all that. I'm like, dude, my faith should not keep you from being who you are. I I'm okay with you cussing, man. Like I'm good.
Yeah,
Like that's not a big, yeah,
I
man, but
believe
I don't
that.
feel comfortable. So I had to release them from that. Like, dude, don't do that. Be who you are. And if you're around people that don't do that, then that's on them. I just want you to know, I want you to be yourself whenever we talk.
And I love that. And I think as we get older and we get wiser, you know, I can remember times when, like when I went to Europe and I was sharing my faith, and that was who I was. That's what I did. And I got to the point later on where I was like, I believe people can see it in me. And that's my prayer is God, show who you are through who I am, not through any props or what I show people or what I have to say to people. I shouldn't have to say some, Christian words for people to know. They should just know by my spirit. They should know. Like when I'm doing this podcast, I ask people, and that's one of the pillars in the questions,
Mm-hmm.
but I can tell through doing the podcast which people I should ask the question to, which ones I shouldn't. To that, right? Because I don't want to embarrass somebody and go, tell me
No.
about your faith. And then they're going, well, I don't believe in anything. You know, I don't ever want to put somebody in that situation.
Right.
But there's so many people I can tell just through their countenance, just through the way that they run, that they believe that there is somebody bigger than them that is kind of running the show and giving us the free will and the free choice. And so I appreciate so much that you shared that with us, and and I think it almost frees people up to say, wait a minute, I don't have to, strap my Bible on, put it on, and carry it around and show people that I got to do stuff, because you can be just, if not even more effective in being the example of faith than talking about it, because we spend so much time talking about. I know it just got in me as far as my throat. I want to do it one more time because I don't want to run out of time before I ask you another question. But
No problem.
you talked about health. You talked about being this, like, you kind of skimmed over it like it was this little bitty thing where you were an athlete, not kind of an athlete, but the soldier of all soldiers, like the ultimate soldier, right? Well, I didn't win, but you were probably like in the top echelon of folks who ever do that. What do you still do to keep healthy, and not only physically, because I think that's important, but mentally, because I don't think you can be physically healthy if there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in your military. And so, and you're in, I think like the stress that has to be at the White House, because every 4 years you got a whole different team that you're working with, right? A whole
Yep.
different administration and everything else. Like, I got to redo this, and then all the backfighting and all that kind of stuff. So how did you keep that sane and you keep your body up and all those things?
So for me, one thing I did is, everybody is like, oh man, I want to be like that guy, or I want to do like that guy. I want to drink what they drink. And for me, I just found what works for me,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like there's some people, they have their ritual, their routine that they do every morning. Well, I have one like that, but mine just fits my style, right?
Yeah.
So, like, um, like I said, mentally, I just try to, stay around positive things. I stay around positive people. I'm not saying that I'm around non-positive people. I'm around them too because, how do like one thing I used to love, Dr. B, was people would say, you know what? You're the only one that talks to so and so. Like everybody else avoids him, but you purposely go to him and ask him about his family and how he's doing, and he doesn't bark at you. Why is that? I was like, because that's who I am. Like, I want him to know that if everybody else is running this way, I'm not going to run away from him because he's still a person too. So that's, well, how do you be around a person like that that's so negative? They're so this. I said, because I know for me, I do things to stay positive. So when I go and let's say my positive meter is at 100, by the time I'm around that dude, I'm dropping to 50. I'm going to go back and reload and get, boosted back up. And I do that through different things, whether it's, jazz music or gospel music or reading, right? I love my boy Marshawn Lynch when he got ready to retire, and they was like, oh, "What do you want to tell all the players coming after you?" And it was funny, but man, I love what he said. One of the things he said was, "Take care of your mentals."
Yes.
And
Yes.
I love that because you knew what he
Yes.
was saying. And basically, he was saying was, you got to stay mentally strong, right? You can't let the highs take you too far and let the lows take you too down. Just try to stay even keel. And I think for me, mentally, I always try to stay even keel. Things aren't as bad as they seem to be, and they're not going to last that long. Things are going to change. So it was so funny. Like, I had a guy, Dr. B, I haven't seen like years, and I saw him at a location. I was like, "Hey, Mark, how's it going?" His introduction response was, "Hey, the most positive man in the world. What's going on?" Right?
I
And
know.
I just love that because that's
Yes.
what he walked away with our relationship. Like, no matter what happened, this dude would always find a way. He wouldn't sugarcoat it. Like, I wouldn't sugarcoat it,
Of course,
but I would
no. You would
always
just,
show them
yeah.
there's always the opposite side of whatever is going on. And even if we can't understand it or can't see it, we're still going to learn from it. So that's why, for me, mentally, I just try to do those things that, um, keep my mind right, my health as much as I can, right? And I just try to do the things that fit me and my discipline versus trying to do something I know I can't do.
Well, I would love to be called the most positive man in the world. I mean, that's just what a compliment that is. That means the impact you made in somebody else's life because that's what they got out of it is so cool. Now, don't get me wrong here because I believe what Daryl's saying is you got to be you and you got to find out what works for you. He's not saying that fried chicken and
Nope,
cakes and candy is going to work for anybody. He's not saying that. So
not at all.
you don't hear him saying, do you and what works for you? Because I promise you, diabetes is what works. If that's how you're going to eat and take care of yourself. So
Absolutely
there's
right.
got to be a whole
Absolutely
bunch of
right.
common sense in there, right? Oh my gosh. This has been like such an amazing conversation. And I know you don't believe an hour went that fast, but I would love for you to take some time and whatever we didn't talk about that you want to talk about, how to get a hold of you, all those things. If you could kind of just share some of that with us in our last few minutes, I would sure appreciate
I think the biggest thing I want to share right now, and I know that, as we're doing this podcast, there's a lot of different things going on in the United States and people are affected in different ways.
that.
Definitely not trying to shy away from that. I'm realistic that, things affect people different ways and more people than others. But I would say, and I've always said this even before, that there's not a problem in this world that can't be solved um, without good leadership.
Yeah,
I just really believe in my heart that leadership can solve anything. Even if we're going through some challenging times, if you find that leader that you respect and maybe you don't talk to them that often or you haven't talked to them in a while, I just want to tell people, whoever that person is for you, reach out to them and just say, hey, I haven't talked to you in a minute. I apologize. I'm not feeling my best right now. I just need to talk to somebody, right? And if you are that leader that does that type of thing, pay attention to what's going on, pay attention to the people, try to check in on them a little bit more because people could be going through a lot right now. And that's one of the things I purposely try to do. I value relationships. So I will call people, um, so often, whether it's every 2 months, every 3 months. And they always say, oh man, I feel so bad, man. I haven't talked to you in like 6 months, but you always call me like right on this time. And I'm like, man, this is not I do it, so you need to do it back to me. This is me I just want to know how you doing today, man. Like, how's your family? How's this? And so I just say all that to me falls underneath the umbrella of leadership. So what I want to share with anybody, all your listeners is, Try to be that best leader that you can. Even you may say, well, I'm not in charge of anybody or anything. Well, you know what? You're in charge of yourself. So lead yourself first and then take it from there to see who else can benefit from your leadership. Because everybody has something inside of them that somebody could use, somebody could learn from, could grow from. And I know a lot of times, especially as men, we kind of downplay a lot of stuff like, oh, I'm not a superstar. I'm not Denzel. I'm not this. I'm not that. But you know what? But you are somebody and you mean something to someone. So don't take your life for granted that you're not making an impact. That's one thing I love about leadership, man. Leaders can make an impact no matter where they are and who they're with. And sometimes they don't even realize it, as long as you're doing it for the right reasons.
Wow, thank you for sharing that, because sometimes we get to talking about all these things and where to go, especially when you're leaders and you have vision and you're thinking about the future. But the relationship is everything. And serving others, we've talked about that several times today. And I love how you put that. If you're feeling led to call somebody, call them. If you haven't talked to them in a while, even if it's been years and you haven't talked to them, that one phone call can make such an impact and such a difference. And if we do that a lot more, even me, we can put on these facades that we're doing great, all the time, and the positive man in the world. But I guarantee you that Daryl got some calls from some people sometimes that changed his countenance, it changed what he was thinking at the time, changed the direction sometimes of how you react in the next 2 or 3 months, and then how you react to other people. And so what a great way to end the show is, hey, remember that we all are going through stuff. And I don't know if you remember, when I went to the historically Black church, there was always these ladies who were sitting in the front row that had the white hats on, and they were the mothers of the church. And so I would say, Miss Jones, how you doing today? She said, bless the Lord, bless the Lord. And then, like, well, what's going on? I'm just going through it. And one thing that came to me is, Miss Jones, when you will get through it? I knew you since I was 5, and now I'm 13, and you still going through it. Well, how you help somebody get through it is those phone calls that you make. Because nobody should be stuck in that same situation 5, 10, 15 years later, and you could be the catalyst that allows them to progress. And so I thank you for sharing with us today, Daryl. Thank you for just spending the time with me. Like you said, I get stuff. I'm the luckiest one. You got to do one of these with me, and I hope you'll be able to come back. But to be
Anytime.
All the time is just fantastic. And so for those of you who got something out of this and want to contact, do you have a website or something? I know you got seminars and stuff. Is there a way that somebody could find out more about them? Or
Sure. They can find my organization, Alliance Seminars Coaching. Right, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, the website allianceseminars.org. And again, I exist just to help people, really. I mean, I tell people my career has been so high where I can't get any higher than that. So, the rest of my time on this earth is just pouring into my family and pouring into others.
Well, and think, because if you're on Air Force 2, you're pretty much above every other plane that's out there. You can't get much higher unless you're an astronaut in space on the moon or something like that. Oh, so cool. Hey, so subscribe, share this with somebody. If there's somebody you think that could utilize what we talked about today and it can make their lives a little bit better, share it with them. And then I'm sure you'll find, if you go through all our interviews we've done, you will find somebody that resonates with you in a special way. I want you to don't forget that you're God's greatest gift. He loves you if you allow him to. And you, my friend, will look forward to seeing you exactly on the next one that we do here. And whatever we can do to help, let us do that. We'll talk to you guys soon.